If you're struggling with your vitality, energy, mood, focus, or sleep, this podcast is for you. Your host, Dr. Tsung, ER doctor and aerospace flight surgeon, will help you reach for the stars and remove the barriers or blockades that have been holding you back from living your best life. If you've been challenged by your health, relationships, or productivity, then it's time for a breakthrough. So here's your host, Dr. Tsung.
Hello, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science Show, and I am your host, Dr. Tsung. And today I have here Dr. Diana Mercado-Marmarosh. She is a family medicine physician and also an ADHD life coach for physicians, and also a mother. And she has been, for the past 3 years, she really has been using, her own condition of ADHD to enhance her life. And I think in this world of distractions, phones, the digital world, TV, we're getting pinged at from all different places. Even if we do not have ADHD, we are still getting very distracted. And for us to achieve productivity, life balance, be high performing, I just thought that this was so important. I'm really excited to bring Dr. Mercado-Marmarosh on. So thank you again for being here. And would you tell us, you could do a brief introduction of yourself, and please let the audience know why is it so important for them to get a hold of their ADHD or their distractible state.
Yes, thank you for having me in this amazing platform. The reason why it's important to realize that the tips that I'm about to share with you, whether you have ADHD or not, or whether you know somebody who has ADHD or not, it can really impact their quality of life and also their life expectancy. And I think this is a topic that people don't necessarily point out. And I think that it's slowly getting more and more awareness around that. It can actually, if we don't manage it well, it can actually decrease your life expectancy 10 to 15 years. And I'm going to hopefully throughout this conversation share with you the why. And sometimes it's obvious, but again, like you just mentioned, even if you don't have ADHD, we can easily be distracted due to our society's expectations to be multitasking, like switching from one task to another. And sometimes we get lost in what we're doing, or we lose track of time, or we forget something critical, and that could end up speeding and being in a car accident, or that could result in an injury. And so people with ADHD tend to have higher levels of that happening. And they actually say that I'm not here to push medicine or one thing or another, but I just want to share with you the data so that then you make informed decisions. With information comes knowledge, and with knowledge comes understanding, and hopefully shifts. And so one of the things is that they say that having a 6-year-old take their medicine, if it's indicated for their ADHD, it's like having a free babysitter, because their response inhibition is gonna allow them to have that 2-second of pause that people without ADHD normally have before they make a decision. And so that 2-second of pause can make a big difference between running into the street, right? Or being distracted and not catching the ball that's coming to their face, or forgetting their glasses and therefore misstepping in different places, right? So what I want to point out to you is that you really could make a difference, even if it's your neighbor who has ADHD, and just learning and being more curious on how can I support these individuals. Because the way I describe ADHD is like you're left-handed in a right-handed world, and regardless of you getting advice on how to do the thing, and you do the thing 1,000 times with the right hand, it still doesn't feel just quite right. And repetition does not equal you fulfilling or obtaining what you want to do. So if you realize that there's some things that we can do, I have a left-handed chair and a left-handed desk, then all of a sudden you might have the possibility of obtaining what you want just in a different way than you expected to because you weren't aware that you were left-handed. And you're probably thinking, well, how can you not know? Again, when you are doing something, goals or whatever it is, we sometimes don't realize we might have to do things 10 different ways before we get the desired outcome. Because if your why is strong enough for you to get XYZ outcome, you're going to produce whatever it takes to get that outcome. Versus if you knew, hey, it's okay to take breaks frequently, and that actually doesn't mean you're lazy. It actually means you're recharging. Hey, it's okay to go for a walk so you can get more dopamine. And maybe you don't have to do the homework as soon as you get home. Maybe you actually do take a break. Then you go for a walk. Then you do your homework because you have, quote unquote, now got enough energy, dopamine levels. Then you could actually complete the task versus having you have that kid sit there for 2 hours screaming, fostering, and they want to do the task, but they just can't. So there's a difference between the ability to and the possibility of. So that's why I think it's important that today we have an honest conversation and realize that, just becoming curious can lead us to productivity and in a fun way, because usually we don't try to incorporate fun until we have earned it. And sometimes that's exactly the opposite of what somebody with ADHD needs to do.
Yeah, I think there are two questions I have for you after that. I think in terms of definition, you defined it really well in terms of the adult. I'm curious, what is, not definition, but like maybe signs or symptoms, maybe for a young child. How can you tell a young toddler, a young child is just being a child versus if they have ADHD symptoms and signs, and how much of that is impacted by early screen time? I'll leave it at that for now, and I do have a follow-up question.
Sure. Yeah, those are really important questions because, again, it's normal for kids to be curious and want to do their own thing on their own timeline, regardless of what the parents' timeline is. And so usually when you start, they say that you can diagnose ADHD as early as 4 or 5 years old. And usually you have the input. It has to happen in 2 settings. It can't just be at the house that they're not following mom's or dad's rules or whatever, right? It has to be at least in 2 settings. So it has to be that the teacher at school in that environment is seeing that while everybody seems to be staying on task, and I'm putting quotation marks in the air, meaning they verbally gave like something and the kid didn't follow, say, instructions, right? Everybody else seemed to be doing the task, but that child is either running around, or if you're a female, they might be daydreaming. So a lot of people don't realize that men typically, kiddos, males, typically are going to have the hyperactive component to ADHD, and females they'll get labeled as shy. It's not that they're shy. It's just that the way they process the thing is that they are in the back of the room, like thinking of all the other thousands of ideas. And so I want to point that out because ADHD has nothing to do with intelligence. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to give a med so they're going to become smarter. No, they're always their personality, how they're going to develop was always there. And sometimes this is genetic. And of course, there is something about nurture versus what's the word? Nurture versus genetics, right?
Nature.
And so nature, yes, there it is. Nurture and nature. That's what I was trying to say. So because it's genetic, if you grow up in an environment where both of your parents are kind of facilitating, scaffolding, helping you to do the task that you need, your ADHD, even if it's there, might not get revealed until later in age when your systems do not support you anymore. If you're in an environment where you don't know if you're going to eat, you don't know, like mom is in and out, dad is in and out, like you are maybe there and 2 parents are working, that system that doesn't provide as much support, there's questions whether that's PTSD versus ADHD versus a mixture of both. And so I wanna say that too, because people always wonder, well, why didn't it come up until earlier? Like there was always signs and symptoms. So I'm saying this, that it has to be in two places. It can't just be at school. Is it because they don't like the teacher? Is it like, or was it also with a coach? Like, did the coach notice something? Like if they were in the soccer team, baseball team? So it has to be at least in two places. It can't just be like at the church that they're like not wanting to listen to the priest or the rabbi or whatever, right? So that's what I mean. It has to be at least in two places, not just that the kid is only going to do the things they like and the things that they don't like. And that's something else to keep in mind, because if they really like the coach, it might be masked that they have ADHD because they are, again, putting everything they can, getting dopamine. And so it's interesting. And this is something that, I mean, people with ADHD try to act as quote unquote normal as everybody else, because it's in the human nature, right? We want to fit in. We want to not stand out. We don't want to be the one that is talking too much or being too loud or whatever, right? Because all the time, people don't realize that if we're interrupting you, is not that we don't care, is that we're really trying hard not to lose what you just told me, so that you realize I am paying attention. And so, but then what happens if you start daydreaming and then you totally missed it, and then you feel like a punk for not listening to your best friend as they're talking to you? And so the question then becomes, okay, how do I diagnose them? And like you said, how do I know whether this is appropriate or not behavior? So there's questionnaires, there's screening questionnaires that need to be by the teacher, by the coach, by the parent, and then you compare them. Because when you're screening for ADHD, you're also screening for like learning disabilities. Do they have dyslexia? Do they have a hearing problem? Do they have anxiety? Again, is there stress in the environment because they don't feel safe? They don't know if they're going to eat. They're not, so you have to look at it as a whole. And then with that information, even if you don't have ADHD, the techniques that we can talk about today, you can still apply them, because kids, they're very curious, but sometimes they can't tell you, I'm frustrated, I'm mad, I'm stressed. What do? They have a meltdown, right? And all of us, if we're stressed enough, become 2-year-old toddlers, like, as we just lose it, quote unquote, because we don't realize that our executive functions like hit a max, and what you're requiring of me to do certain tasks, whether it's planning, task completion, task switching, prioritizing, whatever it is, you're asking me to do all 3 or 4 or 5 tasks, emotional regulation, stress management, all at once, can get us like overwhelmed. And as kids, we might not have those words. We might not be able to verbalize, hey, I really can't complete that task. Like, it's going to look like I don't want to do my homework, but they're really trying to do it. They just can't seem to do what they know they should be doing or want to be doing.
Got it. It sounds like there's a lot of other reasons that could lead a child to act the way they act, and it has to be in 2 settings at least, with a screening questionnaire, etc. And it definitely sounds like it could be complicated. And my follow-up question is like regarding, you started coaching physicians who have ADHD. I'm curious. Number 1 question is, why did you get onto that path? And number 2. What, if you do have ADHD and you enact the strategies that we're going to talk about, where is their life like before, and then what kind of life can they achieve after? Is it actually possible to live, with productivity and live a normal life with ADHD?
Yes. So why? Why? Because 3 years ago, I would have never talked to anybody and told anybody I had ADHD, because in my mind, ADHD equaled not good enough, or equaled not worthy enough, or equaled, it just didn't equal anything that I wanted anybody to know. Like, I didn't want people to know how hard I was working. I felt embarrassed that, and ashamed that I was working 20 to 30 hours outside of work, just trying to chart, just trying to do all the admin stuff of completing the in-basket as a family medicine physician. you can easily have 200 to 300 charts. If you're seeing about 23 patients a day, they can easily add up. It's not even like months and months. Like it's just like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks if you get distracted somewhere. And, it could just take 1 or 2 of your patients who might be a little bit more complicated that you spend this time, and then you're super late and you're running and your brain is telling you X, Y, and Z. And so once I got to the pandemic, like everybody did, I realized that my systems weren't supporting me anymore. Whatever I had been doing, trying to mask, trying to do whatever, not showing people how hard I was working, it was just not sustainable. And I started to wonder whether it was me or whether it was the system or whether there might be a different way of doing the task that I needed to complete anyways. I mean, I knew part of my job required charting what happened in the encounter. I knew that and I wanted to do that, but could there be a different way instead of what I was currently doing? So trying to figure a Hail Mary, like trying to figure out how can I be the mom I want to be, the wife I want to be, the housekeeper I want to be, like without judging myself for how much stuff I had all over. And I felt like I wasn't adult enough or physician enough or you name it. I started listening to podcasts. I drive back and forth 30 minutes and I happened to land on one that was Sunny Smith's Empowering Women Physician. She was being interviewed by Brooke Castillo, which at that time I had no idea that she was like the main one from a coaching program. But anyways, I listened to this physician talk about how your thoughts had something to do with how you show up in the world and that your emotions were kind of linked to that and that you could really change your lifestyle and if you just decided to. And I thought, yeah, right. What are they going to teach me? To work harder? Like in my mind, I was like, this is BS. That's what I was thinking. But I said, but what do I got to lose? It sounds cool. Empowering women physicians. I want to be empowered. I did not feel empowered. So I went into that. And then I started having life changes. I started to realize that ADHD was just a neutral thing. And whatever I made it be, that's what it would be. So if I thought this is the best thing ever, which of course, that was not my thought at all. I had no access to that thought at that point. All I thought was like, this is the worst thing ever. Nobody should find out about this. Like, that's what I thought. And that was making me feel ashamed and So with that, when I realized, oh, okay, it's just like high blood pressure. It's just like diabetes. And I'm not judging them. Why am I judging me for that? So I started to wonder, what if I could get curious? Like if I had diabetes, I would get curious. How would I treat what diet do I need? Like, what if there's something I could do to help my ADHD? And then I realized there was coaches, like ADHD coaches. I had no idea about that. And so then I invested in that. And before I knew it, I started to heal. I started to realize that, okay, like I said, maybe I was just left-handed and I had no idea. And because whatever I was doing was like, it was love-hate relationship. I love my patients and it was helping me to have enough energy to complete all the stuff that I needed to do. I was always one that grew up knowing that if you work hard, you obtain what you want. And I didn't realize that I was working harder than somebody else. I thought that's what is expected as a first generation, college student, medical student. Like I didn't know the way. So therefore, every single path was the way. And because I wanted the why strong enough, I wanted to do that. Then I started to realize, okay, what if I talk to other people about this? What if there's other people like me who just didn't know that there were tools? And from there, it was never my intention to become an ADHD coach. In my mind, once I finished medical school, I'm done learning. I'm done taking tests. I'm done. Like that's what my brain told me. But this was a different type of fun. This was a fun of like discovering of being like, oh, what? I get to use fun to help myself? Okay, this is weird. Like I've never equated learning with fun. For me, it was always like, this is a task I have to do in order to get to the task I want to obtain. So the why was, what if there's other out there who might be still suffering like I was, which I didn't realize I was suffering because to me, that was what was expected. But what if there was other people out there who maybe teaching what I had learned because, once you learn something, you consume it all. Like I, deep dived into finding all the tools and figuring out what if they would benefit. And so slowly but surely, I created like a 6-week course, which then became an 8-week course, which then became a 12-week course, which I basically just spread it out, because once you get into something, you do so much at once, and then you forget that not everybody's at the same pace that you are. Like some of them are just got the diagnosis. Some of them don't even have a diagnosis. So how was I gonna like shove all this information? And I just realized I had to slow down so that they could consume at their pace, but at the same time, be a sounding board for them so that they felt like they had a community they could come to and share. And so I think embracing my ADHD has helped me to be a better physician, better mom, better, client, because I know that I will always have a coach, because in order for us to continue to grow, we need to continue to trim those limiting beliefs that got us here, but maybe as we are growing into or becoming who we're always meant to be, we need to remove some of the weeds that maybe are still there.
And I'm curious then, from your class and your group coaching, where have they started? And what are, like, for these physicians, where were they when they started? Can you give us 3 top, 80-20 action steps or strategies? And then where are they now, like in terms of some changes that you've seen?
Yes. So usually I've worked about with 90 physicians in the last 2 years, and all different specialties, from ER to internal medicine to OB to psych to nocturnal to family medicine, you name it. Radiology, we're everywhere. Okay. So that's the thing with ADHD. Whatever you're passionate about, you're going to pursue. About 80% of those physicians have the diagnosis of ADHD. The other 20% don't. But they were, I guess, in a place where they felt like their systems were just not supporting them. They felt overwhelmed. They felt tired. They felt like, what's the point? Like they felt like, I've done all this for what? Like for me to be living somebody else's life, somebody else's version of how I should be living, and I'm not happy. And so they would come to me at a place where they're like on probation for not having their charts done, or they had gotten fired, or they were in the middle of divorce, or like something that the pain was no longer bearable, right? And that they needed something else because they just, whatever they had done hadn't worked. And so here I was saying, hey, I figured something out, come talk to me, right? So they figured what they got to lose. That's what they figured. And so slowly, like people who had gotten fired all of a sudden had better job opportunities with lesser hours, because we talked about, self-care, negotiation, knowing your strengths, working in your strengths, delegating the stuff that was really just a time depletion. And sometimes we don't realize that what we're doing, even if they're a bad habit, they're serving a purpose. So then getting really clear on, okay, how can I get the same outcome from that thing, but in a way that is gonna recharge me instead of deplete me? Like, and it sounds really simple, and you're like, I'm not gonna pay anybody for that. Like, that's simple. But again, when you don't slow down enough to evaluate what's going on, and when you don't have accountability, that's where I think the secret sauce was. The accountability of being able to come and talk to somebody every single week about whatever was going on, and realizing that they can give themselves permission to practice medicine exactly what makes sense to them. If it means that I'm only going to work part-time, do that. If it means that I'm only going to work twice the whole month, do that. If it means you want to work 7 days straight, do that. Like realizing you could modify your schedule. You could say no to things that were extra volunteered positions that were not paid, just because you were guilted into it, or just because whatever, right? Realizing that you can say no to certain things, and it doesn't mean that it's always a no. It just means no right now, in this moment and stage, right? And so learning how to prioritize the things that were more urgent, like, yes, I need to have XYZ to graduate, or XYZ to pass my board, or XYZ to get paid, or XYZ, knowing what is really urgent instead of just feeling overwhelmed was like life-changing for them. So then they learned, okay, I can set an intention. I can actually plan. And most of us want to run away when we say plan, because we tend to be like, oh, I want to be flexible and in the moment. Yes, you want to do that. But when you make a decision ahead of time, you're not banking on how much executive function you have left that day. Any decision you can make ahead of time helps you to then be able to show up that day. So if you know that, hey, I have to pick up my kid, I have to pay for this, I have to do the CME requirement, then all of a sudden you break little things, little habits into it, and you start to modify and you become more intentional. So it's not that they let go of who they were. They actually stepped into who they were, which they thought it would be the opposite. They thought they had to forget themselves to be whoever they wanted to be. And it was actually embracing the things that they hadn't been doing and learning to start dancing again, learning to start painting again, learning to take care of themselves first. That would then all of a sudden increase their productivity, because now they rested. It was not they earned it. Now they purposely put it on their calendar. This is when I do this with my family. This is when I do this for myself. This is when I'm going to chart and sit and do what I need to with my patients. And so now they set places, and they started to incorporate executive function tools that they didn't even realize were tools, as they were checking in with themselves, learning how to regulate when you're overwhelmed, how to take a deep breath, how to tap for 3 minutes, which regulates your emotional regulation, which is an executive function. And so by doing some of those things, then they could be more present with the patient. They could actually close a note faster. One of the biggest things that they take away, and if you just take this point away, is gifting yourself the time before you jump on to the next activity, giving yourself that wiggle room. That might mean in the exam room, writing your assessment and plan, giving yourself 3 to 5 minutes to flush out, because you already did the thinking. You might as well just document it so that later on that day, when you're closing it, you just do a few things here and there, and you can put as much, like you can literally put like left foot, golf size cellulitis, like you can tell yourself and then put that into the physical exam. If all you did was the assessment and plan, you can grab that and throw some stuff on the HPI and throw some stuff into the physical exam, so that you now already did the hard part. Because if you do that, that helps you. And so if you're not a physician, how do you implement this? Well, you implement this again if you have to go pick up your kiddo, or if you have to leave work. Give yourself some wiggle room so that you sit with yourself and say, hey, did I do everything I wanted today? Where's the nugget? Where can I leave myself some notes so that tomorrow when I pick up, I'm just starting from here. I'm not trying to figure out what I did the whole day. So it's some implementation of gifts that they don't seem like they are anything, but they're a big thing, because then you can pick up where you left off on purpose, instead of feeling like you're flustered everywhere. And if you always are intentional, then again, that you focus on gets the attention that it needs. And so in a world where everything dings and everything is designed to get our attention, that's such a critical thing to do. So before, usually my physicians have the best intentions. They know what they want to do. It's not that they're not smart. They're amazing. After, they now learn the executive and emotional regulation tools to be able to do what they wanted to do. And they realize that it's a process. It's a journey. You're never going to do it like this, especially when you've done XYZ for 30 years, 40 years, right? 50 years, you're not going to, quote unquote, get to the other side and all of a sudden work or be functional like everybody else. But you're going to do it in your own way that makes sense to you, that's aligned with your values, aligned with your strengths. and not feel guilty for having some privilege to be able to buy back some things that they're boring for you. Like if that means laundry, if that means somebody doing the dishes, if that means somebody picking up your kids from school, if that means having a babysitter for date night, like whatever it means to you, owning that and realizing that you were not meant to come and do everything yourself. You were meant to stay in your zone of genius and then let everybody else do whatever they do best in their zone of genius.
Yeah, that's like music to my ears in terms of zone of genius, because we talk about leveraging other people's time a lot, so that, or, the other part is, think about your own hourly rate. And if you can pay somebody else less than that, then just pay someone else to do it, so you can create and you can be present with your loved ones. And so I wanted to summarize, in terms of the techniques, because there were quite a bit. Number one is being intentional in planning, if you set the intention instead of being proactive instead of reactive, then that's going to take you a long way. And that if you write something down and prioritize something, that we talk about in the podcast, do the top 3 tasks, priorities, list the night before, actually. So when you wake up in the morning, you're ready to go. So you don't have to even think about what you have to do that morning. And then the third thing is having the non-negotiables already scheduled, like self-recovery, chiropractor, massage, date night, family present time. All of those are non-negotiables already scheduled into your calendar, and your work and actually goes around it. And then the last thing, that's automating. There's eliminating, unnecessary tasks too. And then the delegation, you talked about leveraging other people, having an au pair, a handyman, a cleaner, a house manager, maybe any other tasks that you don't want to do, that you don't get excited and have fun in doing, then don't do it, and let other people, other experts take care of it. Does that kind of summarize what you just said? Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think you got it exactly like that. Helping yourself to help everybody else, right? And in helping yourself, you have to really help yourself. You can't kind of help yourself. No, you need to say out loud what you need, because when you say out loud what you need, there's a 50-50 chance that you might actually get what you need. If you don't even ask for it or say it out loud, people cannot read your mind, and it's always going to be a no, because how are they going to know what you need if you haven't asked? And I know that sometimes you don't even know what you need. We're at a stage where we're so overwhelmed that we're like, hey, right? But you have some friends who you can just talk to, and they're very honest with you. And sometimes we don't want to hear it, but sometimes you know who you need to go talk to. And yes, it might sound scary to do everything that they say, but pick 1 or 2 things, start somewhere. And with that, you start to get some sense of security back, and that starts to help you to do the next things.
And so, if you were to give one micro action or micro step after this, would that be it, or would that be something else? And number 2, where can people find you on your websites or your social media? How can people find out more about, coaching with you and your services, etc.?
Yeah. So, I think that one of the realizing that emotional regulation it's actually an executive function. A lot of people don't equate emotional regulation with executive function. I feel like as physicians or any professional, sometimes they've been told leave your emotions at the door. To be professional means to be fully present and not distracted, and not let anything else that's going on in your life come through. But we don't realize that being able to leverage those emotions can be really healthy for us, and can really cause us to reach an emotional intelligence capacity that can make a stronger relationship with the patient, with your spouse, with your significant other. And vulnerability, which is something that seems really easy to do, but we don't necessarily practice enough, normalizes a conversation if we're struggling, because as humans, we're not meant to know everything. And when you share then you normalize where you are, and somebody else can be like, well, of course I can see da 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 da. But sometimes you don't remember that you are the pickle in the pickle jar because you're not aware you're in it, right? So emotional regulation would be something that I would love for you to figure out how you can do that. Can it be through putting on a song so you can calm down? Can it be breathing? Can it be dancing? Can it be stretching? Can it be looking at pictures of your kiddos? Can it be like seeing cats running around on YouTube? Like, what can it be that is going to recharge you to then take action from a different place instead of a place of like, I'm really mad right now. And yes, I know that even mad can make us change things, but we don't want to change things when the other person can't hear because we're so elevated, screaming, blah, 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 blah. We want to use the emotion to get us to where we're going, but we want to use it in a way that helps us to regulate. So if you take away today that planning is a superpower, because then you're making decisions when you're calmer instead of right there and then where everything feels like it's falling apart and you don't really have access to your frontal cortex in that moment in time because you're in survival mode. You're not in like, thinking mode, which is the planning, it's different. It's one is like we're thriving, the other one is we're surviving. And so realizing that planning and emotional regulations, if you can get those two executive functions out of the 12 that are around, like I feel like you're gonna get like at least 4 or 5 hours back of your week.
Wow. Yeah. So start planning, do the top 3 priorities today for tomorrow. Plan it today, and then start thinking about perhaps a micro recovery that, gets you to change your state from a down state to an up state, if that makes sense. So I think those 2 are my biggest takeaways, and I hope the audience can start, just do it right now after you listen to it, or think about it in your head, and don't just listen to it and let it go and forget about it. Take some action now while you have the momentum. And how can people find you, Deanna?
Yes. I'm just going to tell you one thing about emotional regulation in kiddos, because I think this is like sometimes as a parent, the pain of your existence when they're having a tantrum and you want to like, do something that is not what you would want to do when you're at that stage. Just remember that something is not being met for them. Like, and they don't have the words to tell you. Are they hungry? Have they had food? Like, are they tired? Do they need to sleep? Like, are they disappointed because they didn't get the pink thing? They wanted the purple thing, whatever, right? So just remember that the kiddos are not on purpose trying to make your life harder, although that's what our brain tells us. And so whenever something like that is going on, just tap into compassion and switch it, distract them. Start singing, start screaming with them, just playfully before they look at you shocked. And then you're like, well, I thought that's what we were doing right now. And then you laugh, like you just change it. You just need to realize that it's connection. At the end of the day, it's connection. So how can you create a safe environment for them? And you can tell, listen, I see that you're very frustrated right now. What's going on? Or maybe we'll talk about it in 2 minutes. I'm going to be right back. Right? And so that's how you can do that. Like, I think that's going to help you, your sanity, and it's going to help them. And it's going to be so much better. Okay. People can find me at ADHD-lifecoach.com. And I have a podcast that is called Beyond ADHD, A Physician's Perspective, which Dr. Tsung is going to come and give us her tips soon. So I try to bring people who can help us. And again, whether you have ADHD or not, you might have a family member that you can offer tips to, and it could make a world of difference, especially for their quality of life and their life expectancy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Deanna. So for the audience, please check out, her website, her podcast as well for all the tips and everything we have discussed here, the resources, the links. It's going to be on itsnotrocketscienceshow.com. And if you go on there, there is also a link to the Facebook group. If you go on ansungmd.com, over there, we'll share productivity tips as well. And also you can sign up for a 7-day free masterclass in terms of productivity. So again, thank you so much, Deanna, for coming to this show. We are very grateful for your time.
Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. And remember, everyone, that everything we need is already within us now. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review in iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a private VIP day for a health and life makeover with Dr. Tsung herself. Then be sure to head on over to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com and pick up your free gift from Dr. Tsung. Then join us on the next episode.